What's up folks, CrushSG, and well, here we are, 10k subs. Honestly, I'm still completely blown away by how fast the channel has grown in such a short time. Quick backstory, my first ever foray into YouTube was about 6 years ago. Different channel of course, for a completely different hobby as well. It took almost 2.5 years for that channel to hit the same sub count, so I guess it kinda explains my reaction here. I frankly don't know what else to say, but a big thank you for the support and I really appreciate all of you. Alright, so a couple of days ago I published a post on the community tab asking for any questions you'd like me to answer for this video. My original plan was to pick 10 questions from there and 10 frequently asked questions from the comment section of my videos. But as it turns out, of the 10 questions I had picked from the comment section, you guys asked 8 similar ones in the community post. So I just grabbed 8 more questions from the community post to bring the total to 20. Let's get into it. Question 1. What is your favorite game ever? Now that's an easy one. Diablo 2 and its expansion. I do have other games that I like, but this one beats the rest by an immensely large margin. And I'll just quickly answer 2 questions that I'm pretty sure will come up after this. No, I don't like Diablo 3 despite having many thousands of hours played. And no, I do not have plans to play Diablo Immortal at the moment. You see, playing a mobile game with a dedicated PC client that is also well optimized for PC, like Genshin, is perfectly fine. But having my all-time favorite PC-based franchise make a mobile installment with explicitly no PC support is just adding insult to injury. Question 2. Do you have plans for guides for other characters or the Abyss? Let's talk about the Abyss first. I'd say probably not. I'm not the most skilled player, and honestly, much can be said about the power you gain from spending money in Genshin. There are mechanics and scenarios that my spending has undoubtedly helped me bypass, so my approach wouldn't be entirely fair or realistic. Besides, we already have Enviosity to take care of anything related to pure skill and the Abyss. As for character guides, I've seen this question lots of times across many videos, and the short answer is yes, I do plan to do guides on other characters. Though I'm not sure I'll be able to give them quite the same in-depth treatment I gave Noelle. You see, Noelle is kinda special here. The longer answer is, whenever I think about doing a guide for a given character, I always ask myself 2 questions, and I'll only do that guide if the answer is yes to both of them. First, will me making a guide on this character add value to existing guides available for said character? That is to say, are there already good guides out there and would I simply just be repeating information already in those guides? And second, do I actually know enough about the character to provide a guide on it? You see, as a gamer, I have pretty high standards for the guides that I watch. Putting out some 6 or 7 minute clip titled as a guide and saying something like, oh, have this weapon, have that artifact, use this skill, cause, you know, that's how it's done. That just doesn't quite do it for me. For anything to be considered a proper guide to me, it has to offer me everything from basic to advanced level tactics, strengths and weaknesses, pros and cons, all of it. So yeah, I will do guides for any characters that satisfy these requirements. Beyond that, it'll just be showcases or overviews if necessary. Next, what is your favorite thing about Genshin Impact? So what I like about Genshin boils down to this. It has one overarching goal shared by most players within the community, and that is progression. Everyone is basically working toward progressing through the same content, and to that end, it is in a way similar, somewhat, to an MMORPG, which has become my genre of choice over the years. Genshin also affords me the freedom of creativity along the path to progression, and by that I mean I am free to generally play the game however I want to play it. Now, anyone who knows me personally knows that if there is one thing I dislike more than anything in any game, it is being told that I need to build a specific way to best beat a game, a concept more affectionately known as the meta. Now, maybe some of you already had an idea of this from watching my videos, but for those who haven't noticed, I don't really like meta comps. It just doesn't spark joy for me to beat the game using some cookie-cutter team that has essentially been given a leg up on the design level. Now this is just my personal preference, folks. I truly mean no offense to anyone who mains meta characters or teams. The point is, we all get to have fun playing the game how we want to play it. And that, in a nutshell, is what I like about Genshin Impact. Question 4. Why did you decide to main Noelle? Now, I actually explained this one in one of my earlier Noelle videos, but it wasn't the main subject of the video, so I'll answer it again. Back when I was still new and low spending, I ran into some trouble getting through, I think, floor 7, if memory serves. My second team's carry was just 2 paper. I can't remember which unit it was. It could have been Ningguang. Anyway, out of sheer frustration, I just threw some attack DPS gear on my Noelle, who was, I think, C2 or 3 at the time, and proceeded to clear everything up to floor 9 in one try. I basically never turned back from that point, and shortly after that, I made my first ever Noelle video. Alright, question 5. What other hobbies do I have? How about an aquarium tour? A face reveal? Okay. I get a surprising number of questions about this in my comment section, probably because of my first Q&A video. So yes, I do have 5 aquariums, all sorted by type. 2 of them are African cichlid tanks, 1 with Malawi cichlids, the other with Tanganyikan cichlids, I have 2 planted tanks. One is just a general display type tank and the other is a barb tank, barb being the species of fish. And lastly, I have a South American cichlid tank, which is my oldest and also my largest aquarium. Now, my only other major hobby besides fish keeping and gaming would be fishing, though that is currently on hold indefinitely due to issues I have with how the local authorities handle the fishing situation in Singapore. As far as a face reveal and actual aquarium tour goes though, what I'll say is this. I do have another channel that may or may not contain all of the above, but I haven't updated it in over 3 years. That's all I'm going to say about it for now, because I really don't want to mix the 2 channels. I know there have been a couple of local viewers with keen ears who have recognized my voice and connected the dots. So to you, I'll just say, guys, please don't pecah lobang. Alright, question 6, and this is multiple related questions kind of lumped together. What are your 3 favorite characters design-wise? What is your favorite character, not from a gameplay perspective, but from lore? And who is your least favorite character? So, my 3 favorite characters would probably have to be Noelle, Razor, and Albedo. Noelle because she fills the tank and spank classic paladin style of gameplay. Paladins are probably my favorite fantasy class on a whole. Razor because he just goes berserk and kills everything. And Albedo because he's one of the most versatile supports that I know of, and I'm never gonna give that spot to Venti. Favorite character outside of the gameplay perspective? I wanna say Ningguang or Mona, cause you know, that's a totally lore-based assessment. But taking the waifu goggles off, ultimately and perhaps surprisingly, I'd have to go with Child. He's immensely powerful, but kind of naive, actually a nice guy who perhaps chose the wrong side. He loves his family and doesn't want to expose them to the darker side of business. I really enjoyed doing his story quests. As for my least favorite character, well, Venti of course. He's 2600 years old and still wears diapers over his tights. Question 7. How is your experience with the co-op feature so far? Do you think the feature is already at its full potential? No, I don't think it's anywhere close to full potential. I think a lot more can be done with co-op, but I think it would require entirely new content. The current content just doesn't make for very good co-op play anyway. That being said, I'm not entirely sure if going co-op heavy is a priority for MiHoYo. In the same vein as having PvP, having too much co-op could make the game harder to balance in general. As for my personal experiences, well, my experiences with co-op have been largely non-existent. As some of you know, I'm on the Hong Kong server and this was largely a result of my own silliness. You see, being the elite gamer that I thought I was, I made 2 very bad assumptions when I first started playing this game. A, that ping would actually matter, and B, that there would be cross-server co-op or at least co-op within the Asian servers. Hong Kong is in Asia after all. Of course, the Hong Kong server gave me the lowest ping at the time, and as we know now, there is no cross-server co-op. It's all good though, I'm Chinese after all, right? Sure, if only I could read traditional Chinese. For those who don't know, there are two ways Chinese is written, the traditional way and the simplified way. If you learned traditional Chinese, you'd probably be able to read simplified Chinese, but the opposite isn't always true. Now I'm sure you can guess the problem I'm having on this server. Oh, did I also mention that there is basically no one on this server? Take a look at the main Discord region reacts section for the Hong Kong server. You get what I mean. Of course, by the time I realized all of this, I was already past AR40 and about $300 deep into the game. Well, so here we are today, and that's the story of my co-op experience. Next, what changes would you like to see in the game? Now this is a tough one to answer, but I guess if I had to pick the biggest one, it would be to have a mechanic that allows us to work for the ability to store infinite amounts of resin for when we might need it the most. And no, I don't mean uncapping condensed resin. I know many are asking for that. You see, the idea of any decent game is to reward the player proportionally for playing it more. It takes at most 5 minutes to farm 5 to 10 crystal cores and 2 seconds to craft condensed resin. If they uncapped condensed resin storage, anyone would be able to store all 180 resin every day infinitely just by logging on twice a day and playing for less than 10 minutes. Now I don't agree with this logic because it basically rewards players for not playing the game. And I believe this is at least one of the reasons why MiHoYo put a cap on condensed resin. They want you to play their game too, not just AFK your way through progression. My alternative solution would be to have some sort of token reward system from completing various in-game activities, which then allows the player to convert resin into fragile resin. Say, accumulate 6 domain clears or 3 boss kills. Here's a token. Infinitely repeatable quest. Complete all your daily commissions. Here's a token for that too. The player then consumes these 2 tokens and 60 resin to produce 1 fragile resin. What this does is reward players who actually play the game by giving them the option to create 1 fragile resin a day should they choose to do so. Or maybe you spent the last week using all your daily resin every day grinding it out. That's fine. You can now take a day or 2 off and just use all your accumulated tokens to convert all the resin for those 2 days into fragile resin. I think this is a much fairer approach than simply uncapping condensed resin. Okay, question 9. What are your first steps when testing out a new comp? And do you do any computations to help you figure out the rotation, or do you just go by feel? Okay, so whenever I test a new comp, I usually go into it with a pretty decent picture of what I want to do with it. There are really only a handful of interactions and synergies to play around with, so running the comp would simply tell me if I'm right or wrong. Question 10. Do you have any thoughts about the game being Chinese? And I assume you mean being made by a Chinese company here. It feels like the first major Chinese cultural export to go around the world in a long time. Perhaps it's indicative of changing times. So, being from an English-speaking country that is very exposed to Western culture while also having a majority Chinese population, I think that there's a lot of BS politics going around in the world right now, and we really don't need more East versus West drama. It's nice to see a Chinese-made game having success with a Western audience, and if there is any platform where humans can transcend the racial and political nonsense, gaming sounds like a pretty good place to start. Question 11. A lot of us are interested in building Noelle but don't have her at C6. How viable is she in the late game below C6? And if she is viable, how would you change her gear or build if at all? So for a sub C6 Noelle, I'd probably go with the Favonius Greatsword. The higher the refine rank, the better. And full attack DPS gear. Geog damage on the goblet, crit hit piece, percent attack time piece, with a focus on crit stats, percent attack, or percent defense for substats. That's basically the best way I can see her being a viable carry in the late game sub C6. Though, I'd still have to ask what other alternatives you have for carries. You see, while it's possible to make a sub C6 Noelle viable, the return on stat investment to gear her up to that end is not great. Even in the absolute best possible gear, not having C6 could count for a 25 to 30% DPS loss. And you may find more success for equal or less investment with other carries. Okay, so we're really getting into the Noelle questions here. Question 12. What are the pros and cons of using the Serpent Spine over the Whiteblind? From your weapon comparison, it seems the Serpent Spine does more damage, but is it worth the loss in defense? So this is a toss-up between the two, right? The Serpent Spine does provide bigger damage numbers for my Noelle, and the crit rate secondary helps a lot with average damage output. The Whiteblind, on the other hand, is generally the most well-balanced weapon for Noelle because defense scales with her entire kit. I'll say this much. If you gave me 5 Claymore prototypes right now, I'd craft an R5 Whiteblind, get it to level 90 instantly, and then have a hard time choosing between the Whiteblind Serpent Spine and my R1 Skyward Pride. That's kinda how I view all these weapons. Next Noelle question. What are my thoughts on R5 Favonius Greatsword for Noelle? Excellent for running quick swap burst DPS comps with Noelle as the carry. Almost required for running Noelle in co-op, but kinda debatable if you run a regen heavy team already. Question 14. Am I planning to roll for future characters like Hu Tao or Xiao? What characters are you most looking forward to? At the moment, I'd say it's a no to Xiao and a maybe, probably, for Hu Tao. It's mainly because I don't really like Xiao's whole plunging attack mechanic. I find it mildly annoying, to be perfectly honest, but we'll see how it goes as we get more concrete info on them. Now, as for the characters I'm looking forward to, if the rumors are correct about Rosaria being a 4-star unit, she would be my pick. I'm almost always going to be more excited for 4-star units over 5-star ones. They are just more accessible to everyone and higher constellations are much more feasible. Next, do you think Zhongli is viable as a physical DPS with the 1.3 buffs, and if so, what would his artifacts look like? Now, I kinda answered this question in my most recent video, but I'd say it does look like he has potential, though I probably wouldn't run him as a carry personally because it'll effectively split his damage scaling even further by forcing me to choose between physical damage and geo damage. If I did try it though, I'd probably go with either 4-piece Bowlight or the usual 2-piece Bloodstain, 2-piece Gladiator affair, with a Fizz damage goblet, crit stat hit piece, and % HP on the timepiece. Question 16. How good is the Crescent Pike when used as a weapon for carries compared to 5-star weapons? Now, I honestly couldn't say because I don't run any Polam units as carries, though I'd say it's probably one of the better if not the best 4-stars for a Fizz carry specifically. Next, will I do a pre-launch thoughts video on Ganyu? Yes, that's the plan, I'm working on it right now, so hopefully it'll be out in a couple of days. Question 18. Albedo versus Zhongli as a support for a Ningguang carry, who would you drop? I'd drop Zhongli. Albedo with Ningguang all day, any day. Alright, last 2 questions. Why is your voice so soothing to listen to? It's probably the combination of this cheap microphone and the ungodly amount of noise cancellation I have to use to process my audio. It just gives it a nice raspy touch. And finally, ASMR when? Well, how about right now? Jokes aside, I honestly think my voice sounds really weird. I think most folks dislike the sound of their own voices too. Alright folks, that brings us to the end of the Q&A video. Once again, thank you for the support. I really appreciate every single one of you. I'm gonna get back to working on my Ganyu thoughts video for now, so I'll catch you guys in the next one. Crush SG, signing off.